Hello Year 12, it's Mrs. Reed here, and we're going to start looking at the next of our film texts, which is called I, Daniel Blake. Today's lesson is going to be all about understanding contexts, specifically exploring the political context of this film. When we're talking about context, we are asking you really to show understanding of the media product and its relationship to the time and place in which it was written and produced. Now, context could be historical, social and cultural, it could be economic and political. And you know that we will have studied quite a lot of those contexts when looking at Black Panther. Let's start then with a very quick recap. So 4 questions that are going to help really just get you to recall key knowledge and will be useful for this part of the case study. So I want to know 1, what are the 4 stages of the film chain? 2, what is an indie film? 3, what is classification? And 4, what are the features of a film trailer? And you could name 3 to 4. Okay, pause the video and have a go at those questions now, please. Okay, let's go through and mark. So, well done if you got the 4 stages of the film chain: production, distribution, marketing and exhibition. An indie film. Now, you would have paraphrased this, you would have put it into your own words, but you can broadly check to see that you have the right answer. So an independent film is one made outside of the artistic and financial control of a large film company. It's also a film made by a smaller company, often on a much lower budget. So this is in contrast to our high concept, big budget Hollywood blockbusters. What is classification? Well, we looked at classification as a rating given to a film that informs the audience of its suitability according to different criteria. So that might be the levels of violence, sexual content, use of inappropriate language. You might also have referred to it as an age rating. And what were the features of a film trailer? Well, this is a tricky one because there could be so many different things that you've listed here. So here's just a few. You might have talked about the pacing of it, the very fast edits, the use of voiceover as a key convention. You might have talked about the use of key dialogue from the film in order to structure a narrative, the use of star names, the company's logos and slogans, potentially, where it will be shown, whether it's available in cinemas, IMAX, on what date. There's lots of features that could be used for that last one. Okay, so just to recap before we carry on looking at I, Daniel Blake, this is classed as an independent film. That means that is likely to demonstrate some or all of these conventions. So we're expecting it to have a distinguishable content and style, therefore being different to other films we might see in the cinema. It's going to have evidence of the presence of the filmmaker and their artistic vision. So we'll be having a look at Ken Loach today and how his ideologies might be really present in the film that we see. It's likely to have a story to tell, so a real focus to the narrative rather than a selling point. So it's not likely to be a typical genre movie. It's not likely to feature really well-known actors, but it's definitely going to have an important story at its heart. Aesthetically, the film might look different. There may be use of black and white, perhaps more grainy footage. But realism typically is the style of filmmaking, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Independent films will have a lower budget, so that will be evident in the setting, the props, and quite often they are only quite limited in their release. That means that they might not go out across all cinemas like we would see for a mainstream film. They might be more reliant on being screened at film festivals or shown in art cinemas or on television in order to reach an audience. Okay, so let's have a look then at I, Daniel Blake, and let's start with the background information that we need. So this is an independent social realist film directed by renowned filmmaker Ken Loach. Okay, so let's just have a look at that term for a minute. When we talk about social realism, we're looking at the way in which the world is represented to us through the film. In a socially realistic movie, we're expecting to see representations that reflect real social conditions. This might focus on particular issues, such as the plight of the poor and the powerless. And we might expect social realistic films to represent social groups or ideas that are not shown in other films. So in other words, they are underrepresented in other media products. So this is a really important term for understanding this case study. If you haven't done so already, making sure you've paused the video and made a note of that definition is going to be really helpful. Okay, let's have a little look at some of Ken Loach's other films. As it says here, he is a renowned filmmaker. He's not somebody only just starting out in filmmaking and directing. He's been making films since the 60s. So some of the films that he's most well known for, one of them is Kes. Now, Kes was made in the late 60s, and it features a protagonist of a 15-year-old boy. And this boy is working class, he lives in Yorkshire, he is part of a really quite dysfunctional family, and he's really struggling at school. I think the phrase used to describe him is like a no-hoper at school. He's not well supported. It's likely that Billy will grow up to follow in the footsteps of his older brother, who is a bully, isn't particularly nice. He would be expected to go on to work in the local mine. The story of Billy is one that many people know. Quite often, I think this film has been shown in schools over the years. I know when I was growing up that was a film that we watched in school. And it's one that focuses on Billy's really desire to escape from the difficulties of his life. And he steals a young kestrel. He also steals a book about falconry, and he teaches himself how to train and to care for this bird. So culturally, this is a really significant film. It's well known by lots of people. In fact, it's maybe worthwhile asking someone at home or within your close family, have you seen this film? What do you know about Kes? Continuing then with a similar theme of looking at working class protagonists, Raining Stones was released in 1993. Now this one deals with a man who cannot afford to buy his daughter her first communion dress. So in his efforts to try and raise money to do this, to support his family, he makes some really disastrous choices and then is left dealing with the consequences of that. So another film that focuses on a realistic depiction of poverty. And another of Loach's films is Sweet 16. This one was released in 2002. It was set in Scotland. Now, this one is quite interesting because when the film is shown, it's often shown using subtitles. Now, the reason for that is because of its social realism. It's set in Scotland and uses the dialect. So that means that the actors speak using the accent and the words of that local area, and it's a variant really of Glaswegian. So this means that for people that don't live in that local area, it can be quite difficult to understand some of the dialogue. So that shows you the degree of, social kind of accuracy, what we might call verisimilitude, so real world accuracy, that is evident in this text. I think it's also interesting from a classification standpoint too. The film features a huge amount of inappropriate language. There are swear words repeated hundreds of times within it. And that means in terms of UK or British classification, it receives an 18 certificate. Now, that has caused a bit of controversy because some have suggested what that amounts to is class censorship. They argue that those words are not used offensively, but they are absolutely realistic to the kinds of language that would be used in Inverclyde and in those deprived areas of Scotland. When it was shown in the area that it was filmed in Scotland, it was screened as a 15 certificate. So I just find that quite an interesting point, that often classification isn't just that simple, and socially realistic films might receive a higher age rating because they are trying to present life, as it actually is. Okay, let's have a look back then to I, Daniel Blake. So I, Daniel Blake addresses contemporary British social issues. It also focuses on poverty, and it reflects the welfare benefit system in the UK, specifically looking at the work capability assessment and the way in which some people in society are sanctioned for different reasons through the benefit system. The film portrays a group of traditionally underrepresented characters in Newcastle. So again, this is similar to Loach's previous films. We're looking at protagonists that, are from working class, potentially very struggling backgrounds, and of characters of all ages. This time it's set in Newcastle and deals with a protagonist who is in poverty and needs to claim benefits and support after a period of ill health. It's important for us to note that I, Daniel Blake conveys a very clear left-wing political message, and it is critical of specific government policies. So we need to understand more about what that means and what Loach's ideological standpoint is. So much of Ken Loach's work has addressed similar issues, as we've mentioned, and there are more than just those three that I shared. So we see Loach as a social campaigner. He wants people to watch these stories. He wants people to think about the issues that he presents, and potentially he also wants to instigate positive change in society. Loach is known for his socialist political views, so we're going to explore that term next and what that means for the way in which he might represent the issue in his film. Okay, let's start with the definition. So I've taken this from Britannica, so an online dictionary in the first instance, and then we'll explore what that means a bit further. So we're talking about socialism, we're talking about social and economic doctrine that calls for public rather than private ownership or control of property and natural resources. So according to a socialist view, individuals do not live or work in isolation, but they live in cooperation with one another. Furthermore, everything that people produce is in some sense a social product, and therefore everyone who contributes to the production of a good is entitled to a share in it. Socialism represents the idea that society is, as a whole, should own or at least control property for the benefit of all of its members. Now, when I'm trying to explore political ideas, I quite often use this website, and you can also find them, I think, on Facebook and Twitter, and it's called Simple Politics. I find the information that they share really clear, accessible, and informative. So let's use the Simple Politics graphic here to unpick that a little bit more. So if we're looking at Ken Loach as a socialist, we can see then that we might break down some of his ideas in this way. Number one, equality is going to be a key message within his films, that we are all equal. Every single person is entitled to shelter, to food, and justice. Everyone is just as entitled to it as anybody else. He also would suggest then that to achieve equality, we must work together. So we might suggest that collaboration, cooperation makes us better people. A socialist perspective might also represent the idea that strong communities are really important, that wealth is created by everyone and therefore should be shared by everyone. And we might also see representations of social class, because from a socialist perspective, we really need to end social class, moving to a society where there is no division, everyone is equal, everyone is working together. Okay, I'm imagining that you would have done this, but if not, pause the video, make sure that you've got a few notes down on those issues, because they're going to be really helpful in understanding the political background to this film. Okay, so over to you for a task to complete now, just as we would in class. We just want to check for understanding so far. I'd like you to copy and then complete this paragraph that's going to summarise what we've learned so far about the film I, Daniel Blake, its director, and the political ideology which it will represent in the film. Okay, pause the video and get that one completed, please. Okay, so next up I have two tasks for you to complete. They both involve watching videos and then answering some questions. Okay, I think the first one is about 5 minutes long, the video, and it gives us an understanding of a key term to help us unpick the political context of this film. The term we need to understand here is austerity. Now, I'm sure that you've come across this term before, you've heard it used. It may well be that you have a good understanding of what this is already. However, I think it's this news article here from the HuffPost provides a really good contextual background to understand what austerity is and why it was implemented as a government policy, how long it lasted for, and what people's concerns about it are. What impact has austerity had on society in the UK? So that's task one. Okay, you may wish to pause the video and do that now. The link is on Show My Homework. Or you might wish to carry on listening and then complete all of the tasks at the end. So the next task then builds on that. After finding out about austerity, I want you to watch two further clips. The next one is from The Economist, and it talks about I, Daniel Blake. Now, this gives us further understanding of what benefit sanctions are and what impact they might have on individuals in society. So I'd like you to watch the clip and write down, please, 5 facts about benefit sanctions and their impact. And finally, the last clip, this one's just a few minutes long. It's a segment from Newsnight and an interview with the director Ken Loach. He describes the government's approach to benefit sanctions as what he feels is conscious cruelty. And he also states that the scale of suffering due to benefit sanctions is immense. So I'd like you to watch his short interview and make some notes on what you think he means by this and why he is suggesting it. Okay, both of these clips and the questions are on Show My Homework for you to access. Okay, if you can complete those 3 tasks, please, and then send me a copy of your work. You can upload it onto Show My Homework. You can email me a copy if you want to. And if you've got any questions as well, please get in contact. If you've watched some videos and you've got questions you've jotted down, that's great. If there's a term you're still not quite clear about, please ask. And I look forward to our next lesson. Thanks, guys.